Hey there, fellow wargamers. It's your man. It's a Sentinel from across the tabletop. In the last video, as in yesterday, or whenever you're watching this, we talked about the Arks of Omen, detachment changes, secondaries. I also mentioned I was going to do a bit more of a deep dive into how that affects our matchups, the army builds, armor contempt being dropped from the balanced data sheets, the weapons that people are going to start, we're going to see more of, I predict, and the army builds that I've been working on. So the effects of our matchups, we're going to see, for full stop, we're going to see more Marine players. Points have changed. That means that people who would like to try their Marines out again and haven't had success in them will start to put them out there for the RTTs to test them before the big tournaments. It shouldn't change the top end who's playing what, but you're going to see in the smaller events behind closed doors a lot more Marine players, even at club level. A lot more Marine people bring in more Marine armies just to test out the points, see if it's viable. So that's the start of. So if you want to just have a casual game, or even in your RTTs you're going to, just be aware that there are going to be some weird builds that people are trying. On that, from the other side of it, the matchups, when we look at pairing against other Marine players, it's all about who can get that first blood sort of strike. So be aware that if you need to, there isn't enough to screen or nothing to hide. So really examine the board and the terrain and talk to your opponents about how the terrain works and interacts before you decide to put your models down. We as Imperial Fists like to ignore cover, but that only can come into effect if the opponent is on cover, and we have the angles. So just be careful when you're discussing the terrain that you both understand it, and if you need to, put those units in reserve and come on from different angles of the board, allowing you to maximize your efficiency with your shooting. Like I said, you're going to see more Marines, so it's all about having that effective fire to actually kill them, because we're not very good in the combat. We're much better in the shooting, so let's go with the angles. Other things that might affect the matchups now is the other armies that are building to take on Marines. So you always have to be able to, we used to say the base stat line for your army needs to be something that has good AP and has 2 damage, so it can kill a Marine. And then it went to, with armor contempt, it had to be good AP that can kill a toughness 5 3 wounded model. And then it went to invons, so it went to high AP, low volume. Then it went to low volume, high AP with the armor contempt, because the more you could put out. So grav cannons were really good in the armor contempt meta, which is just maximize the amount of shots and they're all 2 damage. I think grav cannons is still massive now because of the AP4 and the devastated doctrine. So a drop pod full of those is still good. It'll be, I think las cannons are better. And that's only because the 4 pinvon and your range and the vehicles and the confidence that it kills multi-wounded models, where the grav cannon still needs to do lots of damage. It's a give or take between those two, so I'll let you decide that, but that's the matchup specific sort of side. The army builds that you're going to see from our opponents will be, like I said, designed for the next at least 1 month, for the next 30 days in the ITC sort of tracking. When those events start taking place, I believe most events by the end of January will have taken on board all of the Arks of Omen rules sets and missions. I think LVO is going to be the last because it's finishing the ITC tournament rankings. That's the last game of the year. So most tournaments are now going to start taking those on, and you're going to see builds that go in towards testing the Marines out. It's not just Marines. I mean, Chaos have got a different build now. Unless you're running the Terminator build, you go into something different now. Bile, Agents of Bile is now, the Chaos Bile list is sort of dead. And other bits and pieces have changed with the Eldar getting a little bit cheaper with their move and shoot now. And they might want to be looking at AP2 weapons from, say, the Dire Avengers. And not necessarily just quality. They can go to quantity now because of the AP1 just ripping through the Marines essentially. So there's going to be a lot of army builds that are going to be slightly different than what we've seen, which is good because that's the whole point of changing something, to make something different and to see something different. We just have to be aware as Imperial Fist players that we have at least one unit for screening, which is why I talk about the infiltrators being a great asset to us at the moment. And that unit is not being shot at by their whole army, if that makes sense. So when you deploy it, you know you're going to get a few shots off from half their army or a quarter of their army, but you don't want their whole army being able to target them, because they will die. Put them in a position on the table where they can only be affected by certain amount of models, and then you then swing over and kill those amount of models so they last longer. So that's the point I'm trying to make with the army builds. They are going to be different. They're going to be interesting to see. And I think the matchup army builds are going to be where it's at with determining if we come out on top. Armor of Contempt, it's not as big as you think in the grand scheme of things. Okay, so we were already ignoring cover, so we never really came across the 2-up armor save with Storm Shield in cover and then being able to kill them, because we were already, as Imperial Fist, ignoring the cover, and the 2-up armor save took them to a 1, and then we had AP1 weapons, so we took that to a 2. That was generically what happened. We didn't have to, so what we did then is we went straight to AP3 or 4 weapons, and we were trying to just spam as many AP3 or 4 weapons to take any unit, doesn't matter what they were, to their invulnerable save. That way then it didn't really matter what we were firing at, who we were firing at, what type of strength, toughness. You just put enough AP into enough shots and took them to their invulnerable saves, and then away you went. And if they didn't have an invulnerable save, bonus, because it just means you killed them. That was the sort of mentality that we were running. I mean, I was running the 3 Contemptors at the beginning, and it was the number of mortal wounds I could give out, because they were just making their armor saves. So it was about taking them to their taking the mortal wounds just to kill them, which is what the Contemptors really like to do. The rocket launchers always were great, and they were mass infantry killers, so they love to kill the Eldar flyers, the Dark Eldar boats, all of that sort of T3. They were good at killing guard, but apart from that, they weren't very good at killing armor, which is where the in the army builds, that's where the Centurions came in, because they were really good at killing armor in combat. They didn't die very easy, so they could trade quite efficiently. That's where you came in. I was running all the Eradicators at one point, because they were just straight to the invuln. If you didn't make it, you were dead. And then I looked at the Contemptor as well, just put the number of shots out, AP1 across the board every turn, 2 damage. So Armor of Contempt now gone. Considering what we were running, we were either running loads of shots, no AP, or quality of shots at high AP. Now we can go for the mid board. We can go AP2, 2 damage weapons across the board. And you think, why AP2? Well, essentially we're AP3 if anybody's in cover, because they ignore the cover. If you look at a Terminator in a Storm Shield, they've got a 2-up save, so they're down to a 1-up save. At AP2, that's 2. That goes to a 2 to a 3, so they got a 3-up save. 2, 3, 3-up save. AP2. Yep. 2, 3. It's because it would be 2 to a 4. Yeah. So 1 AP takes you to 3. If you're starting on a 1-up save, then you're going to a 3-up save. Now, and I know that's just mind-boggling. I just completely, didn't look really through that very hard with my brain. So hopefully that's straight up. So with Armor Contempt, we were already doing that previously, and now we're going to be doing it even more effectively now because of the Devastated Doctrine and the damage. So we were going mass shots, damage 1. Now we're going mass shots, damage 2. Now again, that doesn't really affect the Death Guard because of the reduction in damage, and the vehicles, you need to hit the strength 7. So suppressors, well done, you're back in everybody's Imperial Fist lists. If not, everybody's lists across the Space Marine Army are just going to have loads of suppressors. And if they're not going to be running suppressors, they're going to be running infiltrators. Not infiltrators, Inceptors with the plasmas. And if you're not running that, then you're running bikes with the white scars. So either way, you're going to come across fast moving units with AP2 or above at multi damage. And that's the sort of list you want to be looking at as well for Armor of Contempt. AP2, 2 damage. kills the Marines. It put enough shots into Death Guard, it kills them. And then you want the quality of shots to kill the more heavy infantry, or the number of shots at AP2. So currently Armor of Contempt. The flip side to that is, I know this sounds a bit silly, no Marine now in our army list builds that we can field, apart from Terminator Storm Shields, can stand in the open. If that makes sense. So if you're gonna, if you refer back to something that you did, just before Christmas to a tournament probably, or before, you put a tactical Marine or an intercessor in the open because he's trying to make a run for a objective, and some Guardians shot at you, or say some bolters from the from another Marine army with AP1 because you're in the tactical, you would take a 3-up save. Not anymore. Even in the tactical with the Primaris doing AP2, they were taking 5-up saves. The number of shots that you would be able to tank has put you down to a 20% more likelihood you're going to lose it. So 1 every 5 times someone tells you to roll a dice now, because they're out in the open, you're gonna take a wound. 1 every 5 now. Back then it was 1 every 6. So you take that into percentages wise. You only have to get so many shots on the Marines now that are standing in the open with a 3-up save, and they will fall down. And take into consideration now that most people that are looking at people taking more Marines will take more AP. There are certain weapons in certain armies that you don't even get an armor save against anymore. Melters eat straight through you. Plasma in the tactical doctrine will eat straight through you. Most of the heavy weapons in the Tyranid Codex eat straight through you. All of the weapons on the Chrysler suits, the big weapons like the plasma weapons, eat straight through Marines. Orcs have AP4 weapons on their big mech guns, I think it is, eat straight through you. Strength 8, AP4, like D3 damage or something. Now, I'm not saying orcs are going to switch to mech guns, but they do have rocket launchers on the orcs, or AP2. That's a 5-up save now instead of a 4 in the open, and they're flat 3 damage. So unless you're really careful, you are going to start to just fall away to the firepower of other armies. What else have we got? We got the Dark Eldar and their splinter rifles and splinter racks at AP1 and 2, and their Dark Lances just obliterating models now. They just have to wound and you're dead because they're AP4. The Death Guard have AP4 weapons. I think the only army that I can see that you could stand out of and survive against is probably Thousand Sons, because I think their max goes up to AP3. Don't think they have any AP4 weapons, unfortunately, but they got a lot of psychics that makes up for it. But even AP3, AP2 weapons, when they start stacking some of their psychic powers on their Terminators, are going to be brutal because they're putting 20-odd shots out. And like I said, if they're making you roll like 10 dice, you're going to lose 2 or 3 now, if not 4. 2 or 3 models, and that you're not going to be able to return the firepower to take the Terminators out when you'll start losing those sort of casualties. So remember, Armor Contempt means that Marines now no longer can stand in the open, and you're going to have to work the angles of the game to terrain, to trading. So that's what I'm talking about. The trading game is a lot more interesting for the Marines. We've got to think about units that are cheap and then more expensive, and then the midfielders and things like that. In my opinion, I'm sure someone out there will prove me wrong when they do a completely different build to what I'm thinking. Weapons that might pop up then. There's a lot of talk about the Inceptors coming back. They're 40 points a model, 120 for the unit. They're going to pop down and they're going to annihilate one unit. They'll just wipe out one unit of infantry, regardless of what infantry it is, because of the strength 8, AP4, 2 damage. Unless you have an Invon, you're dead. And they've got movement. They can come down wherever they want. They love the models over 5 because they're D3 per weapon. So anybody that's got a 6-man unit or above, like Guard, they're going to get max shots. If you're running 10-man tactical Marines or 10-man intercessors, they're going to get max shots against you. What's that? 6 apiece, 18 shots, hitting on 3s, wounding on 2s most of the time, or 3s most of the time with T8 and stuff like that, with strength 8, and their AP4 2 damage. Just, if someone says they've got units of Inceptors, give them something to shoot at, and then return fire and kill them. Because that's the only way you're going to be able to deal with them. They should be in deep strike or reserve, and they should come down, and they will kill something. It's just what you want to give them for them to kill. If that makes sense, that trading game. And then, of course, you trade back and wipe them out, and then you have a more comfortable victory on your hand. And that's where the screening comes out. There's a lot more to think about with Marine screening now, because you're not as resilient as we used to be. So we've got to stack the screens up, which is where I come into sort of the army build that I'll talk about in a minute. Other weapon systems you might see be more effective now. I believe plasma over melter might be king. Might be. We're going to see, because plasma can be overcharged to 2 damage, and melters are just d6 at full range, and then 3 at half range, essentially d6 plus 2. The heavy multi-melter on the eradicators sounds amazing and probably is amazing, but for 150 points you're getting 4 shots with the multi-melter on top, so it's 8. They've got to be in the right position. They're 24 inches, they're slow, but when they're in range they're going to double tap, of course, and kill what they're supposed to be shooting at, in theory. But they're heavy, so if they move, they're -1. So you've lost 50% of your shots if you haven't got any command rerolls on them. They are most likely going to be able to be outmaneuvered. And the fact that I've just mentioned all those AP4 weapons from all the other armies just chews up Marines, including Eradicators. Doesn't matter if you T5 3 wounds. Most of those AP4 weapons from the Dark Eldar, the Eldar, the Death Guard, the Nerit Tyranids are all 3+ damage. D3 plus 3. Even the only one I think is the Tau with their plasma. I think they're 2. No, they're 3. On the Crisis Suit they can get plasma damage 3. Yeah, and it's just like, oh, okay, great. My T5 model with 3 wounds with a 3-up save isn't actually as resilient as it was, because it's not now. So just be careful. That killy anti-tank unit that you've built your army to do to go and kill anti-tank or heavy infantry isn't going to be a survival. They're now glass hammers, unfortunately. They come out, they kill what they're supposed to, and then they die to returning fire, in my opinion. And the best army that's got the best use out of them, in my opinion, is going to be the Salamanders with the +1 of wound with the melter weapons. The AP doesn't really matter about it at the time. What other weapon systems could we be seeing? I believe the Dark Angels bikes, the Deathwing bikes, not Deathwing, Ravenwing bikes, are going to be huge with their plasma weapons now. They want to get into the tactical doctrine. They want to be AP4. They want to be in your face with a 4-pin bomb, and then just smashing with you with like 30 plasma shots in your face. With the Inceptors coming down as well, with the Dark Age plasma weapon system, so they don't blow up or something like that. They don't die. They're going to be able to bring 2 of their lieutenants on the what they call the 2 lieutenants, land speeders, and Azrael on, was it Azrael or one of the Ezekiel on the bike or something. So yeah, they're going to be really tricksy now. The Dark Eldar, and I think we're going to see, not Dark Eldar, the Dark Angels, and we're going to see a change in their army build, because the Terminators are still very slow. The Armed Contempt help them, but they've now got to move to Thunderhammers, and then they lose their shooty bit. So we'll see. What else we're going to see with weapons that might pop up? I mean, flyers are dead. Let's get on with that. Flyers are dead. I think we're going to see more las cannons from across the Marine players. We're going to see a lot of armies trying to build to AP2. The Sisters, unfortunately, with their points going up and not going down, and some of their stratagems might die off a bit. And their biggest threat was always combat anyway, with their Zephyrin, the chainsword girls, you know, dying on death. Just AP4, just absolutely tearing through Marines now. So yeah, their multi-melters are still powerful, their pre-game move is still powerful, but with their points increased, they lost more unit. There's going to be more Marines and Sisters on the board. You know, when you point for point cost and you look for unit and unit, and model for model, if you build correctly, you'll have more Marines on the table than you would have Sisters if you just went, say, tactical Marines across the board. And that is going to hurt the Sisters. Okay. Orcs, I think their main build is probably going to be Squighog Riders, because it looks like they're going to be the best. Beast Snagger Boys, Squighog Riders, some of their big beastie characters, some maybe a truck of some sort. They still got the battle rig, the psychic rig or something, which is really good. But those Beast Snaggers, again, are AP 3 or 4, depending on how you're running them. At strength like 9, AP2, 3 damage on some of them. They are just a beast to deal with, and they eat through Marines once they hit combat. The best thing we have is to shoot them to death. Toe to toe in combat, they are going to wreck face. And with a lot of armies, a lot of orcs now moving to running 3 of them, especially with this little squig bomb, just going around and just nuking something for 3 mortal wounds if it can, randomly. With 3 of those, is quite nice. The mortal wounds that the Beast Snagger Knob Rider does, or the Beast Snagger Knob does as well, it's pretty nasty. I was going to maybe see a build from orcs going into the fast attack slots to use up their fast attacks. That's where I see the orcs going, and you might see some weapons popping up with. They've got some decent pistol weapons as well, javelin or explosions. Guard, once their codex has been released properly and that's on the table, we're going to see a lot of AP2 battle cannons on the table. Heavy bolters are all going to be AP1 from them, which is going to rip straight through Marines if they're not in cover. That catacomb bomb, FAQ please, GW, just allow them to do 6 on the unit and not 6 to the enemy unit, and that will just nuke that. That will go away then. Thank you very much. Let's get that sorted. Yeah, the battle cat, the tanks are going to be tough at T8 2 up save, but armor contempt's gone, so taking them to a 4-pin bond with all our 2 damage weapons or plus. I'll now get into my arm list. So yeah, we're going to see a lot of AP2 plus weapons coming into the meta from other armies, including ourselves. So army builds currently. So what am I working on? What have I been working on? Well, I tried out a tactical, just tactical build. I put as many tactical Marines in the army. I went with 2 Stern Guards units with the full melter loadout, around 6 tactical squads. 6 tactical squads, a heavy intercessor squad, a 10-man intercessor squad, a 10-man assault intercessor squad. So I was running, I think, around like 10 troop units, and then filled out with the heavy support slot with the Devastators. So I just went as many heavy weapons as possible against a Tyranid army. It was going really well. I took the Gladiator as well because I really wanted to try the Gladiator again. I absolutely love the model ever since it came out. It was like, yes, this is the new Predator. This is amazing. It was a Gladiator Reaper with the Strength 6, AP1, 2 damage, and the Bolters with the Tempestus. Incredible. I think the model looks amazing. I love it. So, and then Chapter Master Tor Garadon for the +1 to hit, and a Tech Marine sort of as the captains. Give all the rerolls. And it was going really well until turn 3. I'd lost like 2 or 3 units. Turn 3 happened. These big monsters that were being protected or just couldn't quite get to because of train tagged a load of units and then just obliterated them with their AP4 weapons or AP3. Couldn't make a save. They were all like 3 damage, so the Marines were just being slaughtered left, right, and centre. And it didn't feel bad to lose them after having so much board control. But their monsters in one of their builds give them obsec and 5 wounds. 5 counts as 5. So even the tactical Marines on their own couldn't hold an objective because of the Tyranid just contested it. It was infuriating, but it was a good match, and it just proved that, in my opinion, I don't think the heavy infantry build is worth it. Possibly, yeah, it's not worth it, unfortunately. Yes, you get a load of las cannon shots. Yes, you get a load of heavy bolt shots or grav cannons and more multi-melters, but they're still going to be in the right position, and it is only 1 shot because the bolters are still not doing anything, unfortunately, even against T8 models. So I then built a list that ran all the Contemptors. I wanted to see if that worked again. Unfortunately, what happened there? The Contemptors, the AP1 didn't matter about the game. I think I played Nicked Orcs, and the AP1 didn't really matter because he was 5 up or 6 up. The vehicles died quicker, but the Ramshackle dropped them down to a 1. Yeah, and then there was that. So that was how I built those 2 lists and was trying to work out where I would like to go. I've played 2 games now. Oh yeah, so I spoke to Nick and he suggested I'd probably put another Gladiator in. because the one gladiator was sticking out, did its job 1 or 2 turns, and then died. So running 2 gladiators now, and I've used that twice now. Really enjoyed having the second gladiator. It just puts so much more damage out, the second gladiator with you, because when the first one goes down, you can then replace it. I was running a Redemptor with the plasma, the macro plasma on it, and all the small guns. I've now replaced that with a Leviathan Dreadnought. So essentially all I've done is I've taken the loadout that I was running, which was the plasma, 6 shots at strength 9, AP4, flat 2 damage, which can be increased to 3 essentially. Giving it the auto cannon, giving it the siege drill. It's got the missiles on top and the nipple guns. I can have the flamers or the grav. Haven't really made my choice up yet. I like the grav because they're still heavy weapons and they're long range. I like the flamers just in case I get tagged. They're better in combat. So he's a direct replacement for the Redemptor. He's got an extra wound, still got armor contempt, still got reduction in damage due to eternal. He's got a 5 pin over the Redemptor. He has virtually the same amount of damage profile with the auto cannon, and the targets preferably I'd like to target with him. Still do the wounded on 3s because the T8 is a thing, T5 is a thing. So even at strength 9, you were still wounding T5 models on 3s. So the plasma and the macro and the auto cannons still are on par. He doesn't kill vehicles as easily as the Redemptor with his heavy gun, essentially with the auto cannons over the auto cannon array over the plasma. But I'd always roll 1 or 2 anyway on the plasma and I'd be like, ah, there we go. So I'm only going to do 6 damage. At least I have a guaranteed 8 shots with this. Most vehicles are T7, so I'm wounded on 4s. There's no rerolls on him. He's not core, but he does give the Tech Marine next bloom does give him a +1, so he generally hits on 2s, if not 3s, and he's generally wounded on 4s or 3s. So he's a very reliable platform, is what I'm trying to say. And with the 5 pin bond, gives him more survivability. He also has a 2-up save, so those AP mass AP1 weapons that are going to be out there, I believe, or AP2, still gives him a higher chance of success than over the Redemptor. And he's still got the same range, 36-inch range, so he's still in that sort of profile to replace. What else did I take? So army build. Torgaradon is more of a staple in the army now. I found with the +1 a hit to anything over the Chapter Master reroll and everything is virtually the same output. I mean, Chapter Master is obviously better, but he can't affect everything. Where Torgaradon can touch any unit in the Imperial Fist Codex and make them +1 a hit. Even Centurions can get +1 a hit from him. So if you ran Centurions with bolters, or Centurions with las cannons, or Centurions with flamers, melters, yeah, whatever Centurion loadout you like, Torgaradon can make them +1 a hit. Incredible. But I don't think Centurions is the way forward, unfortunately. Great 2-up save, 4 wounds, 2-up save, T5 body, too slow. Without the armor contempt, they can't sit in the middle, as in they can't move into the open, and they're too slow to get to another train piece. So you're ending up having to use them as a counter defensive unit, and with the points going up for the bolter unit, you're not going to get the maximum efficiency out of it. They're 180 points now, and I truly believe you can still get use out of them, but if you're going to run 180 points as a counter unit, you're better off using the Terminators with Storm Shields for 160. Silly, I know it sounds silly, but yeah, with a 4 pin Von over, no invon, and those AP4, AP5 weapons out there, yeah, it sounds silly enough to say, but I think the Centurions, close combat Centurions, are dead, unfortunately. Yes, we can get them to an objective, and yes, we can spend 2 CP on give them an extra armor save, get them in cover, and you start to see a comparison with Centurions and Terminators. But it's all ifs and buts, and you're guaranteed to get that one tournament, the RTT, that has got slightly different trade, it's not quite in your favour, and the Centurions do nothing or game or get killed turn 1 with loads of AP1 weapons because you can't make a 3-up save. So they're frustrating. So I think they might be gone, in my opinion. I'm sure you guys will tell me differently. So let's go through the current list that I've been trying. It's about the 4th attempt now, the fourth revisit, and we are currently Arks of Omen detachment. We're running it as an Imperial Fist, obviously, and we're using the heavy support slot. Now, this is where I'm saying it's about the fourth, because I'm not too sure it should be the heavy slot, but I had some points left over and I fitted it in. So we've got the servitors that are in the free slot as a good spot to be in at 30 points, just to sit at the back, do nothing all game, screen out. If I need for data, that's what they're doing. I've got the librarian in there with Fury of the Ancients and Psychic Fortress. Ancients will probably change to, say, Might of Heroes, Veil of Time, just to have that advanced role probably on a unit at the end of the game. Psychic Fortress is essentially what the librarian's there for, and that's the 5-up invuln. I believe this is going to be a staple now. So this unit will now be a staple in Marine armies. If you don't have the librarian in your army, you're not. You don't expect to be shot at and killed. Does that make sense? So if Iron Hands don't have this, then they're a bit silly, but I can see why not. So the next one is the Tech Marine. Primary's Tech Marine. He is actually my warlord. I've given him the Hand of Dawn, which is the D3 extra CP. Start with 3, by the way, 3 CP in this. Give him the Hand of Dawn, and because we're not trying to, in this list build, we're not trying to maximize the efficiency by buffing all the units, re-rolling everything. I just went with Fleet Master for a change. You know, I'm not looking to, because of the units he's supporting, the Gladiators, the Leviathan, another unit that will come on in a minute. The units that are stuck by him don't really have enough firepower to justify re-rolls. If that makes sense. Hopefully it'll make sense, and you'll see. Then I've got a standard Tech Marine with a Combi Melter, an Omnisire Power Axe, and the Servo Harness for the Flamer and Plasma Shot. But he's just to back up the two Gladiators. And then Tor Garadon for the +1 a hit. Yeah, amazing. He's also, if you can put him with your Leviathan, so stick him with your Leviathan. Where is Tor Garadon? Tor Garadon, sticking with the Leviathan, you now have a 2 hitting on 2s, and then you have 2 counter punches, 6 attacks on the charge, 5 attacks on the charge, flat 3 damage, minimum 2 going up to 3 damage. They quite nicely go together. They help each other out in combat. They do really well. He protects. And then if he does get charged, Tor Garadon can Hurricane intervene and do a bit of counter punching. 7 wounds, T5, nothing to scoff at, especially if you think about transhuman on him and a feel no pain. There's not, and a CP reroll if you've got all the CP to spend. There's not a lot of stuff out there that is just instantly taking Tor Garadon off the board. So it's an interesting take to go with it. And they're my counter, sort of sit on the backfield counter, which is quite expensive when you think about it. It's like nearly 400 points, but so far so good. Even against Custodes, the Leviathan and Tor Garadon stuck around to the end, so you know, I was quite impressed with that. Then in the troop section, I went with the heavy intercessors with the heavy rifles and the upgrade to have the heavy bolter in there. This is again just that backfield protection, but also means that I can screen out a little bit further up with the infiltrators. And as you'll see, I've got 2 units of infiltrators with the full upgrades. The Helix, the Gauntlet for the Helix Gauntlet, which is the first failed armor save, is ignored to 0, which is awesome. Not that I'm saying it catches people out, but you mention it at the beginning of the game and you get to turn 3 and it's about the time where you bring in one of them in to do your data. Someone shoots at them and you roll it and they go, oh, I failed my armor save. Well, isn't that one dead? No, I ignore it. And they're like, I forgot about that. And the amount of times that's happened and it's kept the unit alive and then they're able to do something later on in the game is massive. So it's basically having 6 models. Well, you get an extra 5 models if you can keep them alive every turn and they get shot at. So really key bit of kit. Then we got in the elite section. This is because we haven't even got to the part where my heavy support takes up the slot, and then you have to take, so you get the HQ, 3 heavy supports, and then you can take from 3 from everything else. Troops 9. So in the elites, I just went with 3 slots. I went with the Leviathan, like I said, with the missiles and the upgrades and everything like that. And I have put the Volkites on here because I want to try I like the Volkites. Again, that's just that 1 mortal wound. Just to kill that model right at the end is really neat. And then we have the Scouts. A lot of people are saying, well, not a lot, no one's saying anything about the Scouts at the moment. But I think Scouts have got a massive win in the new points change. absolutely huge win. So they went from 70 points down to 60. So it's 60 points and all their war gear is free. They don't have OBSEC, that's right. They do have core. So you could benefit them and buff them. You can give them camo cloaks and a missile launcher, and the sergeant can have a combi weapon and a thunder hammer. You can give them close combat, bolters, you can give them shotguns, you can give them sniper rifles. They have a utility of weapons that are there. The build that I've put is 2 units in. I give them 1 heavy bolter because you've got the stratagem for the Hellfire round. I give them 1 for the missile because you've got the stratagem for the flak that affects fly units. I have to check if it's been FAQ to aircraft. But that D3 mortal wounds from both those. It's flat 3 wounds from the heavy bolter to a monster. So all those demon armies that have got monster keywords, you can just go, hey, bolt 3 damage. Mortals. Amazing, in my opinion, for 1 CP. It's not going to come up every time, and it's not going to be a massive impact. But if you just remember, you got those 6 scouts holding a corner, flanking. They get concealed positions, so they get to do what the infiltrators do, move up into the middle board, or they have outflank, which is probably the biggest thing they have on their profile. Outflank allows you to be put into reserve essentially, but come on from any battlefield edge. It ignores the battlefield edge of your opponent, which is massive because that means from turn 2 you could come on from their battlefield edge, because there's one mission where the battlefield edge goes and you can still be effective to do the data. And then turn 3 onwards, you could put both of them in your opponent's deployment zone, right behind them for behind enemy lines. And that's a huge factor, which I think is underestimated by the scouts. So there you go, scouts in the army to do behind enemy lines, to do the data if I need to go into no man's land. Very flexible utility. They are that screening unit that I've been talking about. They don't trade very well, so they don't kill, but the combi weapon and the missile launcher, and then, you know, if someone decides to charge them and you get the sergeant still around, it's 3 attacks at strength 8. Yeah, nothing to scoff at from that thunder hammer. You could take a Terminator out quite easily with it. So into the fast attack slot. So the fast attack slot, I've got the attack bikes with the 2 multi-melters. Incredible unit at the moment. I think now back because of the movement, size model, screening, speed. And then the suppressors are huge again. These are now strength 7, AP 2 damage. Massive amount of firepower, massive amount of movement. One can go in deep strike if you're thinking about taking behind enemy lines. They've then got a screen for that. And then the other one sits at your back lines, waits for the perfect opportunity if it needs to go to the middle, to a flank, to take the objectives, and then just moves around the table being annoying. I found that the later you can keep these alive, if you can keep these units in a position to be more effective later on in the game, as in turn 3 onwards, they become into their own, because the chaff units that you've killed or don't shoot back at them as much because you've still got the big heavy hitters, and the chaff units can't kill the big heavy hitters, so the suppressors then become more of a threat to the army once the chaff units are dead, and just try and keep them back a little bit longer than you expect. So I found that if I move turn 1 with them and try and get them effective turn 1, they die because they're quite exposed at that point. If I move them turn 2, they get pot shotted and then they become less effective. And then as soon as I decide to move them turn 3, they become really effective because there's no pot shots coming back. So they become more effective in turn 4 and then turn 5 later on in the game with the speed and the movement they have. Devastator unit, like I said, I had some points left over. I upgraded the sergeant obviously with a combi melter and thunder hammer just for that counter measure. They get the cherub free. I know las cannons may not be the ultimate loadout, for them, and I'm sure we'll go through the whole precipice of which is the best loadout. But I considered strength 9 as a primary weapon at 48 inches would be more beneficial to myself because I don't have anything over strength 8. I don't think strength 9 with a plasma sense, but that strength 9 just takes on those T8 models much more easy, even though the damage output is slightly less than the others. But yeah, I went las cannons for the D6+1, obviously with the Imperial Fist. Never moving out of Devastated Doctrine. It's a great little unit if you just need to keep what can't kill one model to get that Codex Warfare. Then we've got the 2 Gladiators, like I said, incredible unit. And then I've been toying with the Repulsor Executioner. So essentially my army at the moment that has points to change the army in the Devastators and the Repulsor Executioner. So I think the Repulsor Executioner is interesting. I've dropped the Redemptor, I've dropped the Volkites, so the firepower in the army is on par with the 2 Gladiators, but has lost the strength because of the plasmas and the rockets. So with this, it gives me that plasma incinerator, the macro plasma incinerator, and the Gatling, which is essentially two firepower. It's a platform of 2 firepowers from the Redemptors, which are 370 points for 2 Redemptors, and this comes in at 250, but the same firepower. It doesn't have the same amount of wound counts, unfortunately. It's 16 over their 26, essentially, but they've got reduction in damage if you think 2 Redemptors. So essentially they're running at around about 32 wounds, if you think about it, over the 16 of this. The T7s are a little bit easier to kill over the T8. And I found putting on the bigger gun onto it really didn't do as much damage as I was expecting. So the heavy, I want to say it's a heavy bolt. Oh, I can't remember what it's called now, but it had it was heavy 2, strength 12, AP 4, D3 plus heavy destroyer laser. That's the one, destroyer laser. And it was D3 plus 3 damage, and it just didn't seem comparable to the amount of shots the plasma could potentially get. The range is nice, so you could just stay out of range and just fire those 2 shots if you wanted to. The plasma does put the Repulsor in a more of a position to have to go out and get all its guns in range and be the target for firepower. But what I love about these vehicles is there are a couple of stratagems that people have not been using. So we've got the Repulsor Field. It's +2 to your charges. So for 1 CP, you charge it, it's +2. There you go. A 9-inch charge from D Strike is now 11. I don't care if you've got rerolls and you've got +1, make a 10-inch rerollable charge. It's no longer an 8. Perfect. That's what I want. I want to be able to affect my opponent as much as possible. And then there's one that if you do tag it, so say you charge my screen, you kill my screen, and you tag it, the same strategy, the Repulsor Field, allows me to fall back and shoot. Incredible. And it's one I haven't been using. They've all got the smoke screen keyword, so -1 to hit if they're out in, if I just put position them wrong and you got some good lines or you've repositioned into a good position, you want to take some amazing shots at me, -1 to hit Repulsor Fields. I love them at the moment with the stratagems you can bring onto them, with the -1 to hit, the -2 to the charges, the fall back and shoot. This is the first time really that the Imperial Fists, if you build this list, has a fall back and shoot ability. That was always our worst. I'm just going to read it. I'm just going to make sure I'm reading that right. But the attack bikes have put fall back and shoot as well. And then the Librarian goes with the Gladiators or the Repulsor, gets up that fortress and gives them a 5 pin von. And that alone, the 5 pin von just keeps those models at T8, 14 wounds around a little bit longer. So Repulsor, Grav Pulse. It's Adeptus Astartes Repulsor. They both have the Repulsor keyword, both of them, the Gladiator and the Repulsor Executioner. So use this in your movement phase when the Adeptus Astartes Repulsor Field unit from your army falls back. Until the end of that phase, that unit is still eligible to shoot even though it fell back. We've got fall back and shoot. You know, we no longer have to be Ultramarines now. It's huge. And then the other part of that is you can use it in your opponent's charge phase and add 2 to it, 2 to the charge phase. I thought that was amazing. I thought, yes, this is what I'm going to do. And so far, it's been good. It's been good. I mean, it's been working out. I've had about 4 games now, and I've only lost to the Custodes. And that was bad placement on my behalf and great placement on my opponent. Rich played really, really well. But don't forget, we still have adaptive strategy that we can still use to put everybody in all doctrines. So if you want those, I know it sounds silly, but if you want your Repulsor or your Gladiator with those Tempest Bolters to be AP2, spend the 2 CP. Just check that it can be any unit before I get carried away with this. It's got to be core, so that's a shame. But yeah, scouts can have adaptive strategy put on them. They now have got AP2 close combat weapons, AP1 close combat weapons. The Thunderhammer then becomes AP3 on the sergeant. So, and they're nothing to scoff at either. With 3 guys, that's 9 attacks, because they're 1 base, 1 for close combat, 1 for charging. You can strip with AP1 if you put them in all doctrines. Yeah, they could strip a couple of Marines down, and then the Thunderhammer coming in and stripping another one. You could potentially look at the scouts actually killing a tactical squad off the board. After shooting, obviously, so you kill 1 in the shooting, charge, or 2 killing in the shooting, then you charge and you kill 3 in combat. It's absolutely feasible. So that's the list. I'm gonna leave it there because I've waffled on enough, I think. Oh, what have I done? Okay, real good. Yep. I'm gonna leave it there. So the army build, I'll give an overview of the army. I'll get some pictures put together because I'm still painting the other one. My other gladiator is on the painting table behind us. So there's my other gladiator, still being painted, still looking at getting it sorted. Yellow's gone on, base painting's done. So this is flash kit yellow over a white spray, and then we'll do all the nibbly bits inside, get all that. Yeah. And then I've got my scouts, of course. My scout sergeants are on the desk to be converted to have their Thunderhammers and combi melters add. I have a sergeant already with a Thunderhammer, so he'll just act as my Devastator sergeant for now. I'm a little bit gutted. I really want to run a chapter master again, but at the moment in the build process, it just doesn't seem to be a functional because of the way the army now splits. I put 500 points of my army in reserve, so that's the 2 gladiators, a tech marine and a librarian. They go in the reserve, they come on a flank and then just obliterate whatever's in front of them and then can push round. And then the other army is sat in the middle, so the repulsor and the other primary tech marine with Tor Garadon and the Leviathan, and then and then a screen, which is normally going to be the heavy intercessors or the devastators, and then the other flank is the heavy intercessors, the scouts, the infiltrators, just to go round the one side and make that pincer, and then everything that goes in the middle just gets focus fired with the suppressors and the attack bikes. That's the plan. It's been working. Yeah. We'll let you know how it goes. We'll take a couple of pictures. Thanks for sticking around for so long. I know it's a long one. Really enjoyed talking with you guys. Let us know in the comments how you feel about the list, what your lists are at the moment, what your thoughts are. Stick in the comments. I'll put my email down there as well, so if you want to feed me your Battlescribe armies into the email, then hopefully I'll look at them, respond to them. We'll pick up another chat like this soon. Take care, guys, and bye bye.